Before we get to our review for Justice League, I just want to dedicate this episode to the biggest DC Universe fan that I'd ever known, and my late brother-in-law, who I know was truly excited for this movie to come out, and unfortunately, due to losing his battle with cancer a couple of months ago, didn't make it. So this one's for you. So, Justice League is now out, finally delivering an ensemble movie of probably the more highlighted characters that DC fans would be looking forward to. Finally get a movie where we've got, after Batman and Superman, but Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, the Cyborg, the full team finally together. Yep. So the question is, have they kind of kept up with their subpar performances, or did they finally step up?
I know we said it recently, but third movies can be good.
I think they've finally managed to make a movie that is better than Thor: The Dark World.
I'm going to take it by that comment you weren't overly impressed with it.
It was better than Thor: The Dark World. Come on, it's better than a Marvel movie, at least.
Okay. All right, so...
They broke it. They made it!
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's start with... Now, I know that there's a lot going on right now with the Hollywood controversies, so just so the record is clear, we are not addressing that. We're not referencing that. If we talk about a person, it's their performance and their character. There's nothing to do with what's off camera, because right now, that's just not a good topic. So, How was the casting? I think, personally, Aquaman was done fantastically.
Yep.
I don't think anyone can deny that one. Other than the fact that he looks nothing like Aquaman.
He's supposed to be blonde and... he should be jacked, but he should be blonde, so...
And he's supposed to be easy to make fun of. I don't know if I'd want to make fun of that Aquaman.
No, you wouldn't. You go up to him, not going to make fun of you, Aquaman.
You know what? In some of the darker DC stuff and some of the different universes like the Flashpoint Paradox, he has a much grittier tone to him. He doesn't look like Jason Momoa, but he still has a little bit more of that element. I think they did try to get him away from a more cartoonish, kiddie type persona. And to me, he was my favorite character in the movie. And just behind him was actually Cyborg, which I didn't have many expectations of. I knew of the character and not deep into any of the DC characters, really. But just their personalities, the way that they did an ensemble movie where they were still able to not just be yay, team, they had their own individuality. And these two were a little bit more rebellious, but they had attitude. They had a little bit more of a defining point.
See, I actually really liked the guy that got to play Barry Allen just because he was so awkward. And that's kind of how I see...
Ezra Miller?
Yeah, that's how I see, Barry Allen as being kind of like the really nerdy, awkward teenager type guy.
I don't disagree with that, but I think that there was a few elements in this one where he was just bordering on awkward. I don't have any particular complaints with it, aside from, and this might go more into the special effects and completely nitpicky, which just so we're clear,
running, right?
His running.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my, what kind of emotion was that running? His legs were... bow-legged, and he was just kind of running. It did not look right.
Whoever did the motion capture for that did a kind of a piss-poor job.
It's inevitable that there's going to be comparisons to the Arrowverse that's on TV right now, because like it or hate it, ups and downs, it's been pretty solid for the most part. Barry Allen, or The Flash in that show, when he's running, it looks like a natural motion. Here, it was just what is he doing? Luckily, they kept that to a minimum.
Yeah.
They didn't show close-ups of that very often.
Yeah, a lot of the close-ups were more chest up, his face, maybe his hand pointing at something, stuff like that.
Very reminiscent to the Quicksilver scenes from Marvel.
Yeah, I remembered that. The first time he did that, my thought was, they're trying to do Quicksilver.
Come on, the characters are...
How many different ways can you do that?
Yeah.
But I think Marvel doing it first, and those scenes being the highlights of those movies, because especially Age of Apocalypse, which was not good, that scene was fantastic, so it's going to stand out. You do something like that, and you're following after somebody who did it the first time, you're going to get that comparison.
And it wasn't the highlight of this movie anyways. There were much better scenes in this movie than the slow
Yeah, unlike Apocalypse, where there were no good scenes except for the slow mo.
Any characters that were kind of lacking to you guys?
I mean, the bad guy.
Steppenwolf?
Kind of.
Well, how
I
so?
can see that.
To me at least, he suffered a very similar fate to the Dark Elves from Thor 2. He didn't quite feel like he was going to overpower them, even though he did in a couple times. It didn't feel that way. I don't know.
The thing is, he did feel like a threat, but at the same time, he also felt like a nameless villain, right? So
I mean, in the DC universe, it's not overly nameless, but we're not the biggest DC fans.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that did it a little bit injustice, made it a little bit worse, is that they showed his defeat from eras prior before he was exiled, leading to him coming back as the whole plot point. It's like, does showing him lose really help make him look threatening?
I agree. And the way, when they first introduced him, I was like, okay, I mean, I guess he's kind of neat. Like, he kind of brings hellfire wherever he goes, right? But I kind of wish they would have done almost like a storybook at that point where they showed past planets that he had conquered and just destroyed everything. And that would have made him feel a little bit more threatening.
Or emphasize the fact, because his defeat, which is not really a spoiler because it's him coming back from his exile that puts the whole movie into motion, is emphasize the fact that it took an entire army to take him down. So now when you're looking at it just being against 5-6 people, that, the odds are a little bit more stacked. But they really dropped the ball in that regard.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of reminded me of the defeating of Sauron, the way they had the battle cast. It really felt like a Lord of the Rings type moment there, except, he wasn't built up the same way that Sauron was as this ultimate threat.
Now, and they might be going this way with sequels and potentially hinting at it in this movie, which I won't say for spoiler reasons. Mm-hmm. But I think that for non-DC fans, to have a more recognizable name as the villain. Because there are, Batman versus Superman, I think went too far by putting both Doomsday done poorly and Lex Luthor in it.
Also done poorly.
Exactly. But, I mean, but those are characters that even if you're just kind of a fan of the DC universe, you probably know those characters, right? Steppenwolf is going to be a little bit less known, so it is a little bit tougher. Now, I'm sure DC fans have no problem with it because they're going to have that knowledge from the lore of how powerful he is, but they could have made him a little bit more of a threat. That being said, the fact that he had an entire army with him did make for some nice action scenes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And was like the last half hour, if not more, was just like big action scenes, which I think were done quite well and helped pick up the movie.
Definitely the emphasis on action scenes helped this movie soar above previous DC movies, which, you dedicate most of the movie to an origin story and to trying to build up the villains.
I will say it felt like they spent a little too much time on putting the team together as well.
It could have been worse, though.
It absolutely could have been worse. It could have been worse,
I
know, but
I'm glad that they didn't try and do like a complete origin for every character. Also, and they sort of glossed over it a bit.
I also like that they did kind of separate the team where they had like the leadership between, Batman and Wonder Woman, and they kind of went in separate directions to kind of recruit. I liked that because it didn't feel like one group just going in one direction. It felt, it felt better when they were recruiting.
I think that the whole dichotomy between Batman and Wonder Woman was actually done a little poorly. It's the same critique we had of Batman versus Superman, where they were fighting and then all of a sudden not for flimsy reasons, which I won't say if you haven't watched that review or the movie. But it was almost like they would butt heads on decisions that they wanted to make. And then they show some resistance, and then after that, they're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, they don't hold stead to their beliefs. They don't, if you're going to make them clashing, and of course we're going to compare it to Marvel, but like Iron Man versus Captain America in Civil War, there was no we're just going to, I get they were in a direct conflict, but you have some fairly large thematic elements in the movie about life and death, and they're just so non-committal to their side.
I think the problem there is that it's kind of like they realize that good movies need some conflict between characters, but they didn't know how to do it. So they just forced it in instead, rather than trying to actually build up a real conflict.
I guess if you do a conflict, you have to follow through with it a little bit more, and that could have taken away focus from what the objectives were. But at the same time, that kind of tension or difference in opinion could have even been done just with like an argument. You've now got an ensemble which, they're all about fairness, do a vote. Like there could have just been a little bit more ways to do it without trying to almost like artificially put a wedge in there.
Yeah.
So, okay, characters overall pretty decent.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the old ones, especially that have been in previous movies, like the Batman, Wonder Woman especially, did a much better job with a group than...
as the sole focus?
I will say Wonder Woman especially. As a sole focus, there was a lot of problems with believing her character, with caring for her character. But in this one, it definitely felt like she at least fit, right?
So what did you guys think about, I'm going to kind of combine these two, the special effects and the fighting scenes? Like, the whole tail end of the movie was just one big cinematic special effect action scene, which, I mean, these are superheroes, it makes sense. But even prior to, you had some of that. How did that come off to you guys?
It was good. Okay. But it did feel like there was a lot
You're so middle of the road.
it definitely felt like there were a lot of things that just felt too similar. Like the way the things were popping out of the ground and stuff felt almost exactly like what we saw in Suicide Squad. The sky lasers, we've seen sky lasers in pretty much every action movie by now. That almost seems like a redundant plot point. It almost seems like it's just part of the genre at this point.
I think that overall the CGI was done well, but I really think that overall Marvel has done it better. And I only say that because when you look at a character that's CGI versus a character that's not CGI, in this I didn't believe it. Whereas in Marvel, I could look at them side by side and I was like, I believe that person's there.
You guys are free to argue this point, but I want to present an idea that I had. When I was watching the fight scenes in particular, they didn't feel as organic as they could have been. It was more like, okay, they were flashy. There was big special effects. But it almost felt like a lot of the moves, a lot of the like stances were thrown in there to have like hero poses and different shots. And I'm watching it, and like, not that I can say what a realistic superhero fight would be, but it's like a lot of these motions didn't feel like they would have been appropriate follow-throughs for a swing or different landings. But they really, and even outside of the fighting, how many times did you see a shot of like them standing, and like they really went for the hero poses, the hero shots? Overkill. Did you guys find that with the fighting, that it just felt more presentation rather than realistic combat?
Kind of the halfway point, and I don't want to bring too many spoilers in, but where there was like all of them lined up in front of the statue, I was like, why do they do it? Like, there's no reason to do it that way.
Well, not even just the statue. In the transport, near the end of the movie,
yeah.
Like, they wanted to do these scenes. And I get it, for effect. Sometimes, you have that iconic old, like, Western with the hero coming over the horizon, but you don't have to do it multiple times.
Yeah.
And while I found that it was a little bit excessive in the movie, when it got into the combat scenes, the number of times where we would have, like, Wonder Woman take a slash and then stand in some, like, chest out, arm, sword held, like, pose. It's like, it didn't feel organic.
The one character that I think was done well was Batman. Because he's, like, more human than the other ones in essence. Because he's just a dude.
He's human.
What's your superpower? I'm rich.
Which, hey, you know what? They added a few more comedic moments than
Yes.
I've normally seen in DC movies. And I did appreciate that. But I think what you're trying to say is, and I agree with you, is that they really did make Batman stand out.
Yeah.
He was the one who didn't have superpowers. And, there was scenes where he would just take the weapon off of an enemy soldier and just start shooting people, right?
Or like when he got like kicked against a wall, like it looked so much more real. Instead of him making like some crazy superhero pose, he took it like a dude. Like he just like hit the wall, got up and was like, oh god, that hurts. Okay, let's go back in there,
But they still made him believable to be standing side by side with these
yes.
like
With
superheroes, right? Like
Yeah. Which I mean has always been sort of the center of the Justice League, is that Batman's one of the most important parts, despite the fact that he's the only one there who's not actually super.
Yeah. Like I never question it when it's just Batman. Because Batman is up against other
humans.
More, I mean, there's some that have, but more humans, right?
Yeah.
But then when you put them into the Justice League, which, I mean, yes, they've been doing it forever, but you have to build a story where it doesn't seem out of place for these alien beings, these overpowered, world dominators to, have him stand up against them and not just get his butt kicked.
One of the things I liked about it is that they didn't often have him against Steppenwolf, for example. They had him
Did they have him up against him at all?
No, I don't think so. It was always him taking out the other aliens circling around, or leading the army away so that way they could, get at Steppenwolf, right?
Well, I mean,
because he knows, I mean, come on, if he's going to punch Steppenwolf, he's going to break his hand. There's nothing's going to happen.
And I think it's emphasizing the fact that he's always been there for his brains.
Yeah.
For making plans, for being quick on his feet, for commanding the people with the superpowers on how to most accurately work together.
Yeah.
And I think with having Superman not a focus in the movie, because it's always been kind of co-leaders between the two of them, now he's kind of holding the mantle, and they gave Wonder Woman a little bit more of a Superman role in the Justice League. Not that she was a small part of the Justice League otherwise, but it really did emphasize Batman's leadership. There's even the one scene where he kind of talks the Flash into it when Flash is unsure of his powers because he's new to the game, right?
Yeah.
Compared to the other ones. And it really just shows that he knows how to get these guys to use their abilities to the fullest. And I think that really Batman was done phenomenally in the movie.
Yep.
I agree with that.
Any missteps in the plot?
You know what? I like that the plot was simple, straightforward, easy to follow, even if you know nothing about DC. And that just stands as sort of a step up against a lot of previous DC blunders. It wasn't amazing, though. It was just simple and straightforward. It was a good way to get the action in and to bring them together, which is, sort of the point of the movie.
Well, I think that's what they needed, was a movie that was heavy action focused. This one had a nice runtime.
Yep.
It wasn't super long like Batman vs. Superman, which to me should have been an action-packed movie, but suffered because it was really long and a lot of talking, where this, yes, I thought the origin was a little bit longer, or not the origin, but the assembling of the team was a little bit longer than it could have been. But after that, it was just, all right, for the rest of the movie, it's action. So, I mean, I don't know what else we can really say about it. Am I missing anything?
No, I mean, I think we've covered everything important about the movie.
All right, so why don't we go then to final scores? Josh.
I'm not starting.
What? Okay, Alex?
I'm not starting either. You go.
Okay, fine. I never start, so I guess I'll do it this time. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I think that there is still room to improve. I really did enjoy it, probably the most amongst the DC offerings, and to the point where maybe I wouldn't put it just above The Dark Elf, but it was a solid superhero movie. Yes, I had complaints. Yes, there's things that could have been improved, but when I imagined a Justice League movie going into it, aside from adding a few more of the smaller or maybe not so small characters into the Justice League, I don't think I could have imagined a better scenario for it. So I think, minus a more threatening villain, I think it was a good job. 7 out of 10. Solid.
Cool.
Well, now one of you guys has to go next.
All right, I'm also going to give it a 7 out of 10.
I did not think you were going to get it with what you were saying.
I'm being incredibly generous with that 7 out of 10. I won't be the next time because now we actually have a good DC benchmark movie.
So yours is a little bit more of a 7 by comparison.
Yeah, like maybe it would be a 6.5 if we did halvesies.
You're Alex. You can do whatever you want.
You could be like, this is how many minutes of boredom I had.
Actually, that is one of the things. It didn't bore me too much.
There you go.
There were times where it started to drag a little bit, but thankfully those were always short periods of time before something interesting started to happen again. And I think that was definitely the big thing here, is that DC's done such a bad job of managing time in their movies and managing pacing that seeing them do it well for once definitely made it a lot better. The action was also fairly entertaining. The humor, I mean, some of it was hit and miss.
Now I'm thinking you should give it a higher score.
Some of it was hit and miss, but
It was well needed.
there was some humor that was actually funny, and even the stuff that wasn't overly funny, it wasn't the kind of humor that made you cringe.
Yeah.
Right? It was either good or it was just like
Fell flat.
passable.
Yeah.
And like, I don't really have any major drawbacks for the movie. Yeah, I have some things that I'm kind of iffy on, but there's nothing that was like, oh, this just completely ruined the movie. Kind of like Lex Luthor in Batman vs. Superman.
Yeah. Okay, I'm also going to give it a 7 out of 10.
All that suspense, you give it the same score?
Fine, I'll give it 7 out of 10, and my reasoning is that there were some plot points that I didn't really like. There was too much focus on one particular hero near the end making or breaking the band, essentially. And I didn't really like the bad guy overall. But the action was well done. The overall character development was really good. I really enjoyed Batman. And yeah, that's about all I really have to say about it. So
I think in the end, the best way to sum it up is, if you're a DC fan, you're going to like it.
Yep.
If you're not a DC fan, you're not going to regret going to see it. It might not be the movie of the year. You might come out of it thinking that there's been better, even more recently with Marvel movies, but you're still going to have enjoyed your time.
Yeah. Oh, and far superior to pretty much any of the DC movies in the last, 5
You
years.
guys keep wanting to say that. I'm trying to steer away from maybe a little bit more in a vacuum of looking at it, but fair enough.
I know.
Anyway, that was our DC review. Not DC, Justice League review. Let us know what you thought of the movie. If anybody's actually watching this, just leave a comment as always. Tell us why we're wrong. We always look forward to that, or why Alex is wrong. Until next time, live in the real world, play in a pixel one.